Okay, today is March 6th, and it would have been my dad's 96th birthday. And I miss the guy every single day. He has made me the man I am. And I want to make this an uplifting tribute to the man. I'll tell you why I, in the title, put "He died alone," and I can't forgive myself, because it's true. He died in 2020, November of 2020. And if you were around anywhere on the planet Earth in 2020, you know exactly what was going on. We were locked down. We were locked out. So the circumstances around my dad's death are still not clear because he died in a hospital room all alone. Well, he wasn't alone because I know that as soon as his heart stopped beating, he was lifted up into heaven by the angels to be with his mom and dad and his brothers and sisters who had gone before him. But I can't forgive myself, and I'll tell you why. And then I'm going to get to some pretty funny stories. I'd see my dad 3-4 times a week at the time. We weren't living very far apart, maybe 20 minutes. And I'd bring him over Dunkin' Donuts. He loved a sausage, egg, and cheese croissant with the hash browns and a coffee. The man could drink coffee. And I would bring that over and we would just unwrap that, sit at his little decrepit little dining room table in this 1-bedroom apartment that he lived in, and we would just talk. And if you know anybody, or if you're from the Boston area, you know what you talk about in the fall, and that's football. He was an alum of Boston College High and Boston College. He played football in high school, but he had a severe back injury that kept him from playing any further. So he's a huge BC Eagles fan and a Patriots fan and a Red Sox fan and a Bruins fan. So we had a lot in common. We really did. But in 2020, November 17th, 2020, apparently, and this is all because the neighbors told my brother and I that he apparently had fallen out of bed and couldn't find his way because the room was dark to get back into the bed, and panicked and started banging on the floor. The downstairs neighbor came up. They called the paramedics. They brought him to the hospital, and the doctor said he had a massive heart attack and died. I doubt that story. I'll tell you why I doubt that story. Is I had brought him to the cardiologist less than a year before that, and he passed all the tests. As a matter of fact, the cardiologist, this guy was a hoot. He was sitting in his chair, and my dad was sitting there, and I kind of sit off to the side during the doctor's appointments because I don't want to answer for my dad. But my dad was an Irish bullshitter. Just telling you the way it is. He would tell the doctor whatever he thought the doctor wanted to hear so he could get out of that office real quick. But the doctor figured that out pretty quick, and they were bantering back and forth. And the doctor looked over at me and just winked. And he said, "Your dad does not have any problems with his heart. Matter of fact, the strongest part of him is his heart." And then he joked, he said, "I think his mind might be a little bit loose." And we laughed about that. So the story that I got, my brother and I, from the hospital where he died, doesn't make sense to me. But keep in mind, this was 2020. You weren't allowed to go into the hospital. You weren't allowed. You just weren't allowed. It was not going to happen. Doctors were freaking out. The medical staff was freaking out. It just was not normal. Questions were answered very abruptly, and they had to move on. So the reason that I can't forgive myself is, no, I could not have done anything. God saw all of his days before he was even born. He saw the day that he died. He had numbered every one of my dad's days. So there was nothing I could do to change that. That's not why I can't forgive myself. It's actually an inside joke, but it turned out not to be so funny. Is once or twice, and if you've got elderly parents, they have a tendency to lose their balance and go down. And my dad did that one day. He was walking out to take the rubbish out at his apartment complex, and he tripped and fell. Well, as a lot of the old people are apt to do, they come out and they're like, he's down, call 911. My dad said, "Do not call 911. They said, "We have to, you're bleeding." He goes, "I bleed all the time. Help me up, I'll get back to my place and everything will be fine." And like, "Oh, well, yeah, this guy does." So he got a reputation as, doesn't like hospitals. Surprise, surprise. But it so happened, he and I were talking about that very incident, and he said, Dave, do me a favor. If I ever have to go to the hospital again, don't let me go. And he named a specific hospital 10 or 15 minutes from his house. I don't want to go there. I just don't trust those people. It doesn't have a good reputation. So if anything ever happens to me, don't let me go there. Well, because he had that fall in the middle of the night and they called 911 and he wasn't in a position to argue, they brought him to that particular hospital where he died. Now, again, I'm not saying that anything could have been done differently if he had been brought to a different hospital. It just, I remember standing in the kitchen talking to him and he goes, make me that promise. I said, Dad, I promise, don't worry about it. It's the last place you're going to go. Well, those words rang pretty true because that was the last place he ended up going. So I do miss him, and I wish the circumstances were different. My guess is that you probably have a situation in your family that happened during the pandemic where everybody was shut down. We were limited to the number of people that could come to a memorial service. We were limited to the number of people that could come to the church. We were limited to the number of people who could come to the little lunch that we had afterwards. My dad knew a lot of people. Had it been 5 years earlier, 10 years earlier, we would have been turning people away. He was that well known in the circles that he ran. And so that's the other part that kind of breaks my heart, is here's a man that spent his whole life helping other people, and he dies alone. And so when I think about that, that makes me cry. So he was the best dad ever. And I try to emulate my parenting. I can't do it. When my, all right, let me just tell you number one. My brother and I grew up playing sports. He was a hockey, football, baseball player. I was a hockey and soccer player. And my dad never missed a practice, and he never missed a game. He never missed a tournament. He made it his life's goal to make sure that he was involved. He was. Yeah, I'd be running around playing soccer. I wasn't very good at soccer, but I wasn't big enough for football. And if you ever been to a soccer practice, it's boring. But I'd look over the fence behind the goal, and who's the one guy standing there? My dad. Same thing with my brother's football practices. He'd go over, he got to know the coach. He loved football. He didn't know the first thing about soccer. So he'd stand off and just kind of watch and say, I don't understand. But football was his game. So he got to know the coaches. My brother was an excellent football player, played both ways. He was a lineman, defense and offense. And my dad just loved the offensive line. Anytime we watched a football game, and I'm not making this up, he would say, Dave, did you see that block? Did you see the left guard pull on that play? My God, that center's strong. Did you just see? He just pancaked that guy 7 yards down the field. I said, Dad, I'm not watching any of that. I'm watching the quarterback throw the ball. He's like, yeah, you and everybody else, but that's not where the game is played. So we would go back and forth about that all the time. But what I took from my dad was kids grow up real fast. Life happens real quick. And if you don't take the time to spend with your kids, it happens just like that. They grow up, they move out of the house, they get married, they have kids of their own. Cats in the Cradle, you know that song? That is a song that even when my kids were really, really little, I'm like, I am not going to let the words of Jim Croce define Popsy Guy's life as a dad. I wanted to be there to teach my son how to throw. I wanted to be there to teach my daughter all the things that she was doing. And she was doing a lot of things. She played the clarinet. She played hockey. She played lacrosse. I was there for tournaments, for practices, for, all the band stuff, which I didn't understand. But that's because that's what my dad taught me to do. And so I miss him. I really do. I still have his last 3 voicemails to me. The last one was the night before he passed away. He was calling me because he couldn't figure out how to get the damn Patriots game on TV. Well, I remember that call. I was in Stop and Shop. I was picking up some things. It was a horrendous night. Wind, rain. It was like November 14th, 15th. And I missed the call, but I got the voicemail. I'm like, All right, he'll figure it out. I'll call him tomorrow. Well, there was no tomorrow. And all he wanted was for me to not talk him through it, to come over and figure it out. And I remember another story, and I'll let you go. But my wife and I were visiting friends about 30 minutes south and east of where my dad lived at the time. And he called me and he said, I don't know what happened to my TV. I said, Dad, well, what's wrong with the TV? He goes, that's why I'm calling. I don't know. I'm like, can you give me a little more information? It's like, well, number one, it's on the floor. And I said, well, okay, I'll be right over. So I told my friends, I said, listen, you got to go help the old man, because that was his name. My stepbrother Brad and I were like, we're very close. Um, and my brother Steve, same thing. How's the old man doing? We all miss the old man. We all miss the old man. Short story long. I get in the car and I go over to the old man's house. Yeah, he wasn't lying. The TV was laying on the floor. I said, so Dad, how'd this happen? He goes, I don't know. I said, okay. This sounds like a skit from Bill Cosby. You're the only one in the house. You have nobody to blame. He goes, all right, well, I was reaching behind in my arm. I said, okay, that's cool. He goes, did I break it? I said, no, you did not break it. So I had to put it back up on its stand, reconfigure all the wiring. And I said, where's the remote? And Dad goes, I don't know. I said, all right, let's go through this whole thing again. Come to find out, where do you think the remote was? Stuck in the cushion of the chair he was sitting on. Couldn't find the remote. Anyway, I missed that because it was also a chance for he and I to hang out. We got whatever. I know it was a BC game because it was a Saturday afternoon. I remember that clearly. And we got to watch the rest of the game together. Just do small talk, just to be company for him. And then I went back to my life. But I'm telling you right now, I miss those times. If your parents have already passed, you miss them as well, my guess is. If they haven't, spend as much time as you can with them. Yeah, they're older. Yeah, they don't get around as quick as they used to. Yeah, they may tell the same story 30 times over and over. But you know what? Humor them. They know what's going on. It's as frustrating, if not more, for them than it is for you when they know they can't do the things that they used to be able to do. Like this right now, what I'm doing, I take this for granted. Actually, no, I take that statement back. I don't take it for granted. I will not be able to do this forever. So I thank God that I have the physical and the mental capability to do this and to talk to you. And that's what I want you to do, is to cherish the moment you have. If your parents are still alive, if not, cherish the moment you have with your spouse, if that person's still in your life. And then lastly, if you're blessed enough to have adult children, and those adult children have children, spoil the hell out of them. Tell them everything. Let them do everything you wouldn't let your kids do, because that is the true benefit of being a grandparent. I used to think, well, that's never going to happen. I'm not going to be that type of popsy guy. And, my dad was not that type of guy. But now I am. I sugar him up. I liquor him up. I'll do whatever I can. And then say, all yours. That's not really true. I play with them. We roll on the ground. We ride bikes. We play catch. We do whatever we want as long as they can do it. And as long as they want to do it with Popsy Guy. Because there will come a day when they say, oh, yeah, no, it's good to see you, Popsy. Can I have the keys to the car? I want to go out and hang out with my friends. Cats in the Cradle. If you haven't heard that song in a while, Jim Croce, I think it's Jim. Anyway, just Google Cats in the Cradle. Read the verses, read the lyrics, listen to the song, and realize life is short. Don't take it for granted. Enjoy what you have today. Well, listen, thank you for hanging out with Popsy Guy. You do me a favor and just drop a comment if this resonates with you. It just was on my mind and I wanted to share it with you. There's a lot going on in this world. Hey, you never know. There might be another pandemic coming. That's a story for another day. Anyway, you guys have a wonderful weekend and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.